Scientists just found something beneath Campi Flegrei that had never been detected before. Ever. Not in decades of monitoring. Not with any technology they had until now. And when I read this study, published in Nature's Communications, Earth and Environment, I had to go through it multiple times. Because what they found changes how we understand this caldera. It changes how we assess the risk. And it raises a question that nobody in mainstream science was asking before this paper. Is Campi Flegrei not just shaking? Is it now vibrating? Stay with me all the way through this video, because the further we go in, the more important this gets. I promise you that. So, let's start with what this caldera has been doing recently, because you need that context. The ongoing unrest at Campi Flegrei, which began in 2005, has reached an uplift of approximately 1.4 meters. The seismicity has increased exponentially, with maximum magnitudes of 4.4 to 4.6 in 2024 and 2025, the largest ever recorded. The largest ever recorded. 1.4 meters of ground rise since 2005. That is nearly 5 feet. 5 feet of upward movement beneath a city of 500,000 people. Last year, the scientists logged some 2,500 earthquakes caused by this volcano in a single month. 2,500 earthquakes in 1 month. A magnitude 4.6 earthquake struck on June 30th, 2025, the strongest recorded since the current cycle of unrest began. During that June 30th earthquake, a rock mass detached from the coastal ridge of Punta Penada in Bacoli, at the western end of the Gulf of Pozzuoli, provoking local sea level oscillations. A cliff face collapsed into the sea. Because of an earthquake produced by this caldera, on a coastline where people live, where people swim, where tourists visit. And then just weeks after that, the scientists published something extraordinary, something that fundamentally changed what we know about what is happening deep beneath Campi Flegrei. VLP source components and resonance processes are sometimes observed at other volcanoes, but they were never recognized before at Campi Flegrei. Never before. In the entire recorded history of monitoring this caldera. This type of signal had never been seen here, until now. So what is this signal? What is VLP? And why does it matter so much? I want to explain this in a way that makes it completely clear, because the science here is extraordinary. VLP stands for Very Long Period. These are seismic signals, oscillations in the ground with extremely long wavelengths, very slow, almost like a deep, low hum. Not the sharp crack of a breaking fault, not the rapid vibration of a normal earthquake, something entirely different, something that speaks of fluid, of pressure, of a structure beneath the surface that is vibrating like a tuning fork. The term resonance in this context refers to very long period oscillations detected in the seismic signal, lasting up to 2 minutes in duration, with a dominant frequency of 0.114 Hertz. 2 minutes. A single seismic signal, lasting 2 full minutes. That is not a crack snapping. That is something oscillating, something vibrating back and forth, something filled with pressurized fluid, pulsing repeatedly, right? And now they found it for the first time at Campi Flegrei. Before we go deeper into this, give this video an early like and a hype if you're watching this right now. It means everything to the channel and it costs you nothing, because this is exactly the kind of story that deserves to be seen. Now, the study. Published July 31st, 2025, in Nature's Communications, Earth and Environment, led by Giacomo Rapagnani, a PhD student at the University of Pisa, funded by an INGV scholarship, conducted in collaboration with the GFZ Helmholtz Center for Geosciences in Germany, and INGV, Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology. This is not a fringe study. This is the top institutions in European earth science, working together, publishing in Nature. And what they found is this. They analyzed over 100 earthquakes from the past 7 years. It emerged that during the most intense events, a low-frequency resonance is activated, which revealed the presence of the fracture. a fracture, a crack in the rock, deep underground, that responds to earthquakes by vibrating, by resonating. Among other things, newly discovered long-period seismic signals indicate a fissure-like structure at a depth of around 3.5 kilometers. It connects the underlying magma and gas reservoir with fumaroles, volcanic steam vents, near the surface. Let me give you an image of this. Picture the caldera from the side. Deep down, at around 4 kilometers, sits the magma and gas reservoir, the source of all this pressure, the engine driving the bradyseism. Above it, at 3.5 to 3.6 kilometers depth, there is now a confirmed crack, a pressurized, gas-filled fracture in the rock. The VLP source is located at a depth of approximately 3.6 kilometers between the proposed inflation source and the Solfatara Mare, a massive volcanic degassing center. Between the magma reservoir and the Solfatara. The Solfatara. If you've ever visited Pozzuoli, you know the Solfatara. It's the crater where the ground bubbles, where sulfurous steam hisses from vents, where the soil feels warm beneath your feet, where tourists walk on what is essentially the surface expression of this volcanic system. This newly found crack sits precisely between the deep magma source and the Solfatara at the surface. It is the bridge between them, the pipe, the conduit. The VLP signals can be interpreted as the resonance of one or more fluid-filled fractures, connecting the deformation source at depth with the surface fumaroles. This structure provides a pathway for degassing with mutual interaction between fluid ascent, surface fracturing, and resonance processes. Il Mattino. A pathway for degassing. Gases, primarily CO2 and sulfur compounds, rising from the magma reservoir below, moving up through this crack, escaping through the Solfatara fumaroles above, and as they move, as the pressure pulses, the crack vibrates. It resonates, like blowing across the top of a bottle. The geometry of the structure produces a specific frequency, a signature, a measurable signal. The signals have been consistently resonating at the same frequency, 0.114 Hz, since 2018. Cronaca della Campania, 0.114 Hz. That specific frequency, consistent, repeating, since 2018. For 7 years, this structure has been vibrating underground at Campi Flegrei, and nobody knew it was there until this study. Now, how big is this structure? Based on the resonance frequency and the location of a cluster above it, researchers estimate the dimensions of the newly discovered structure to be approximately 1,000 meters long, 650 meters wide, and around 0.35 meters high. GFZ 1,000 meters long, 650 meters wide. That is a crack beneath Pozzuoli roughly 1 kilometer in length and only 35 centimeters tall. Thin, but enormous in area. Like a very large, very pressurized sheet of gas and fluid, sitting between the magma source below and the steam vents above, holding pressure, vibrating, and responding directly to earthquakes. The June 30th, 2025 magnitude 4.6 earthquake was the strongest recorded in the area since the current unrest began. It triggered a clear VLP signal originating from this fracture. The authors of the study link this response to direct energy transfer from the earthquake into the gas-filled structure, causing it to oscillate. Above the norm news. The earthquake shook the fracture. The fracture responded. Like plucking a string. The string vibrates. The frequency reveals the structure's properties, its size, its fluid content, its pressure. This suggests that the fracture is not only mechanically active, but also tuned to specific energy thresholds. It reacts to disturbances, which means it has the potential to influence broader behavior within the system. Above the norm news, tuned to specific energy thresholds, it reacts. This crack does not passively sit there. When a big enough earthquake hits, it responds. It influences the system around it. That is a significant statement. That means this crack is not just a geological curiosity. It is an active participant in the caldera's behavior. Now, and this is where the science becomes critically important, I need to be very precise about what this means and what it doesn't mean. The resonance frequency of the signals has not changed over the past few years. indicating that the overlying rock above the magmatic reservoir is currently still stable. GFZ still stable. That is the official scientific interpretation right now. The frequency hasn't changed. The structure's geometry hasn't changed. The fluid properties inside it haven't detectably changed, which, in the language of volcanology, is actually a reassuring sign. Because if the rock above the magma reservoir were failing, if conditions were rapidly deteriorating toward eruption, you would expect the resonance frequency to shift. The geometry would change. The fluid composition would change. The signal would evolve. It hasn't. Not yet. Interestingly, the VLP waveforms and spectra have been extremely similar in recent years. This suggests that the geometry and conditions of the resonating source have remained quite stable, and we are not seeing clear indications of substantial changes in the physical properties of the fluids which sustain the resonance. GFZ not seeing clear indications of substantial changes. That is the current status. But here is what makes this discovery so important from a monitoring standpoint, because this is what I find most fascinating when I went deep into this. Its consistency over time indicates that its size and composition have remained stable, a crucial piece of information for monitoring any structural changes that could signal an increase in volcanic risk. Chronocadella campania, monitoring any structural changes. Now that they know this structure exists, now that they have its frequency baseline, they have a new alarm system, a new early warning signal. If the frequency shifts, if the resonance changes, that tells them something has fundamentally changed in the plumbing of this caldera, before that change shows up anywhere else, before it shows up in the ground deformation data, before it shows up in the gas measurements, before it shows up in earthquake patterns. The resonance signal could be the earliest indicator, the first hint, the first whisper from the deep. And they now have 7 years of baseline data to compare against. Think about what that means. Before this study, scientists were watching earthquakes, watching ground uplift, watching fumarole temperatures, all important signals, all being monitored continuously, but all of them are essentially surface or near-surface measurements. This newly discovered resonance signal is coming from 3.6 kilometers down, from the zone between the magma reservoir and the surface, from the exact depth where the system transitions from deep volcanic to shallow hydrothermal. That transition zone, that interface, that is what was missing from the monitoring picture, and now they have it. Similar behavior has been observed at other active volcanoes, but has never before been documented at Campi Flegrei. Chronocadella campania, other volcanoes. VLP signals and resonance have been documented at Kilauea in Hawaii, at Etna in Sicily, at Stromboli, at various volcanoes around the Pacific Ring of Fire. At all of those volcanoes, the VLP resonance has helped scientists understand the state of the hydrothermal and magmatic plumbing. Sometimes those VLP signals gave warning of eruptions before other indicators changed. Now Campi Flegrei is in that club. Now it has that signal. And now the question changes. The question is no longer just, is the ground rising? It becomes, is the resonance frequency changing? Is the structure evolving? Is the gas composition inside that crack shifting? These are new, deeper, more sensitive questions. Questions that this discovery has made possible to ask for the first time. And guys, this is why I kept reading this paper. Because there is one more detail buried in the study that nobody is talking about. The presence of a fracture that connects the deeper magma source to the surface vent fields, while also resonating during earthquakes, confirms that the system is fully coupled across multiple layers. Mechanical stress, pressurized fluid pathways, and brittle fault zones are now interacting in a way that has not previously been confirmed at Campi Flegrei. Fully coupled, across multiple layers. What does that mean in plain language? It means the deep and the shallow are now confirmed to be talking to each other. The magma reservoir below, the crack at 3.6 kilometers, the shallow fault network near the surface, the fumaroles venting steam and gas above ground. They are all mechanically connected. They all influence each other. A stress change at one level propagates to the others. Before this paper, scientists knew the system was connected conceptually. Of course it is. It's all one volcanic system. But this coupling was not directly measured, not confirmed. Now it is. And what that means practically is this. When a significant earthquake occurs at Campi Flegrei, say a magnitude 4 or higher, it doesn't just shake buildings. It mechanically loads this crack. It causes the pressurized gas inside to oscillate. That oscillation can influence the fluid pathways above, which can influence the shallow fault network, which can influence the pattern of surface deformation. It is a chain, a mechanical chain connecting the bottom of the system to the top, and it has now been confirmed to exist. It is storing pressure and interacting with both the shallow fault network and the deeper magmatic system. This level of mechanical coupling has been directly measured, not inferred. Above the norm news, directly measured, not inferred. This is the crucial phrase. Science is full of inferences, good, well-founded inferences, but direct measurement is different. Direct measurement means we saw it happen. We watched the earthquake trigger the resonance. We measured the frequency. We confirmed the depth. We calculated the dimensions. This is real. Now, let me put this in the broader context of everything else that is happening at Campi Flegrei right now, because this resonance discovery doesn't exist in isolation. It sits on top of everything else we already knew. The seismicity increased exponentially, with maximum magnitudes of 4.4 to 4.6 in 2024 and 2025, the largest ever recorded. Nature. The scientists logged some 2,500 earthquakes caused by this volcano in a single month, WVTF. In the past 7 days alone, as of early April 2026, 191 earthquakes were recorded at the caldera, with the largest reaching magnitude 3.4, volcano discovery. 191 earthquakes in 1 week, right now, as this video goes out. The caldera is still shaking, and somewhere, 3.6 kilometers below the ground beneath Pozzuoli, that crack is still there, pressurized, vibrating at 0.114 hertz, holding gas that rose from a magma reservoir 4 kilometers deep, waiting to be triggered by the next strong earthquake, waiting to resonate again. And now the scientists can hear it. A critically pressurized reservoir containing potentially eruptible magma is present today at approximately 4 kilometers depth. However, a major impediment to eruption is the reservoir volume, which would need 2 to 3 decades to grow to the size of the one that fed the last eruption of Campi Flegrei in 1538. Nature. 2 to 3 decades for the reservoir to grow enough. That is the current scientific assessment from a 2026 study published in Nature. The magma is there. It exists. It is potentially eruptible. But the volume is currently too small to sustain the kind of eruption that would follow the pathway all the way to the surface. That is today's honest scientific picture. And now, on top of that picture, we add the resonance. A crack that is vibrating, a fracture connecting the reservoir to the surface, a pathway for gas that has been active since at least 2018, whose frequency baseline is now established, whose geometry is now known, whose behavior can now be tracked. For the first time in the entire history of monitoring this caldera, I want to close with something that the lead researcher said. Professor Francesco Grigoli, co-author of the study, said, "This research demonstrates the importance of developing and applying advanced techniques to analyze large amounts of seismic data. Only in this way can we better understand complex geophysical processes and increase our ability to prevent disasters." Cronaca della Campania. Prevent disasters. That is the goal. Understanding this caldera well enough, deeply enough, to give the people who live inside the 8-mile-wide crater of Campi Flegrei the best possible warning, the most time, the clearest signal, because 500,000 people live there, and they deserve every advantage science can give them. This discovery is one of those advantages. It is a new tool, a new ear pressed to the ground, listening to something no one had ever heard at Campi Flegrei before. Resonance, from deep inside the volcanic plumbing. I'm watching this. I'll keep watching it. If that resonance frequency shifts, if the crack changes, I'll be here to tell you. Guys, if you found this valuable, give it a like and a hype right now. Share it with someone who needs to understand what is truly happening beneath one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Not the headline version, the real version, the version from the scientists' own words. The end screen has more on Campi Flegrei and what the full system looks like right now. Watch it. Thank you so much. Stay safe, guys. Be aware. Bye-bye.